The man came into May Tilton's diner at 11:15 on a Thursday night in February and said he needed a wife by morning. Not to the room, to May specifically, because May was the only person in the room, which was the way the diner was at 11:15 on a Thursday night in February in the town of Creston Falls, which had 800 people and one traffic light, and a diner that stayed open until midnight, because May had decided years ago that a town needed somewhere to go when it needed somewhere to go, regardless of the hour. She was behind the counter with the specific posture of someone who had been on her feet for 11 hours and had reached the philosophical stage of tiredness. The stage where the tiredness was no longer an argument she was having with her body, but simply a condition she was inhabiting and that she had stopped commenting on. She looked at him. He was large in the way that men who spent most of their time doing physical work in outdoor conditions were large. Not the cultivated size of deliberate effort, but the functional size of a body that had been asked to do substantial things for a long time and had built itself accordingly. He had a beard that was the beard of someone who had not attended to it recently, rather than the beard of someone who had chosen not to attend to it, which was a different thing. His coat was a working coat, and the working had been recent. He was approximately 35 years old, and he looked like he had been awake for longer than 35 years. May looked at him for a moment. She said, "Sit down." He sat at the counter. She put coffee in front of him because the coffee was there, and because a man who came into a diner at 11:15 on a Thursday night in February, saying he needed a wife by morning, was a man who needed coffee before he needed anything else. He put his hands around the mug. He said he was sorry to come in at this hour. She said she was open. He said his name was Callum Ware. He said he lived 12 miles up the mountain road on a property his grandfather had left him. He said he had been working the property for 8 years alone, and that alone had been sufficient for 8 years and was no longer sufficient for a reason he would explain if she would let him. She said she was listening. He said his daughter was arriving in the morning. May looked at him. He said her name was Rosie, and she was 7 years old, and she had been living with her mother in the city since she was 2, and her mother had died 6 weeks ago, and the legal process of the 6 weeks had concluded that Rosie was going to come and live with him, and the person from the county who had concluded this was arriving with Rosie at 9 in the morning, and she had told him on the phone yesterday that she had concerns about the living situation on the property, and that she would be assessing whether the situation was suitable for a 7-year-old child. He said he had a house and land and everything a child needed in terms of material provision. He said he did not have a woman in the house. He said the person from the county had mentioned several times that she had concerns about whether a single man living 12 miles up a mountain road could provide an adequate environment for a 7-year-old girl, and that the presence of a female member of the household would address those concerns in a way that nothing else he had said had managed to address them. He said he was not asking for what the word wife usually meant. He said he was asking for someone who would be in the house when the county person arrived at 9 in the morning, and who would be there long enough for Rosie to get settled, and for the county person to understand that the situation was adequate. He said he did not know anyone. He said he had been on the mountain for 8 years, and the people he knew were the people he bought supplies from, and the people at the county office, and none of them were people he could call at 11:15 on a Thursday night in February with this specific request. He said he had driven past the diner 3 times before he had come in because coming in required him to say what he had just said, and saying it had required him to overcome something. May looked at him. She had been running this diner for 14 years, and she had heard things across this counter that covered a range she had not anticipated when she had opened it. The range of things that people said at 1 in the morning, or at noon on a Tuesday, or at 11:15 on a Thursday in February when they needed somewhere to go. She was 41 years old. She had been in Creston Falls for 14 years. Before Creston Falls, she had been in several other places with the specific quality of a person who had been moving towards something, or away from something, or both for most of her adult life, and who had stopped moving in Creston Falls. Not because she had found the destination, but because she had run out of energy for the moving, and had found that the stopping produced something she had not expected, which was that the place she had stopped in turned out to be sufficient in ways she had not recognized until she had been in it long enough to see what it actually was. She had never been married. She had been close to married twice, and on both occasions the closeness had revealed something about the specific shape of the arrangement being proposed that she had not been able to accept, not from coldness, but from the honest understanding that the shape required her to be a different shape than she was, and that she had tried being a different shape, and had found it did not hold. She looked at Callum Ware with his hands around the mug and his working coat and the beard that needed attention. She thought about a 7-year-old girl named Rosie arriving at 9 in the morning on a mountain 12 miles from here, who had lost her mother 6 weeks ago, and who was going to arrive at the house of a father she had not lived with since she was 2. She thought about the county person with her concerns. She leaned forward on the counter. She said quietly one thing. She said, "I'll come." He looked at her. She said she was going to close up at midnight, and she would drive up behind him, and she needed to understand the situation clearly before she arrived. because arriving without understanding the situation clearly was not something she was willing to do. He said he would tell her everything she needed to know. She said he needed to understand that she was not going to tell the county person anything that was not true. He said he understood. She said she needed to understand what the house was like, and what Rosie was going to need when she arrived, and what the county person was going to be looking for. He said the house was sound. He said it was large by mountain standards, 4 bedrooms built by his grandfather in the 1940s, and maintained by himself with the specific attention of someone for whom the house was the foundation of everything else. He said it was heated and functional, and had a kitchen that was a working kitchen, and a sitting room, and 2 bedrooms that were currently unused, that he had cleaned in the past week in preparation. He said one of the bedrooms had been prepared for Rosie. He said he had driven to the town 40 miles south, and had bought a bed and bedding and curtains in the colors that the woman at the shop had suggested when he had told her the room was for a 7-year-old girl. He said the colors were yellow and white. May looked at him. She said, "What did he think Rosie was going to need when she arrived?" He was quiet for a moment. He said he thought she was going to be frightened. He said she had lost her mother 6 weeks ago, and she was 7 years old, and she was coming to a mountain to live with a man she had not lived with since she was 2, and frightened was the word that made sense to him, and that he had been thinking about since the phone call with the county person, and that he did not know how to address. May said, what did he know about Rosie? He said her favorite color was yellow, which was why he had asked the woman at the shop about yellow. He said she liked to draw. He said her mother had sent him photographs at Christmas for the past 5 years, and he had kept all of them, and had put one of them on the bedside table in the yellow and white room so that Rosie would see her mother's face when she woke up. May looked at him. She said, what about food? Did he know what she liked to eat? He said he didn't know specifically. He said he had bought the things he thought a child would eat, pasta and eggs and fruit and bread and butter, and the specific cereals he had seen in the photographs on the kitchen table in the city apartment that Rosie's mother had sent at Christmas. May said she was going to bring some things from the diner. He said he did not expect that. She said she knew he did not expect it. She said she was going to bring some things because a 7-year-old arriving at a new house in the morning needed to find food in it that said someone had been thinking about her specifically, not just food that said an adult had bought supplies. He said he understood. She closed at midnight. She packed what she packed from the diner kitchen with the specific knowledge of someone who had been feeding people for 14 years and who understood the difference between nutrition and comfort and what a child arriving somewhere frightening needed from a kitchen. She put it in the back of her truck. She followed his taillights up the mountain road. The mountain road was 12 miles of the specific quality of mountain roads in this region in February, which was the quality of a road that had been built for function rather than speed, and that required full attention and the understanding that the mountain did not accommodate inattention. She gave it full attention. She had been on roads like this before. The years of moving had taken her through country that required this quality of driving, and she had it from the practice rather than from any particular aptitude. The house appeared at the end of the road as a structure of the specific quality of buildings built by people who understood the mountain, low and solid, and oriented to get the most from the available light and shelter from the wind direction that the mountain produced. The lights were on. She parked beside his truck. He got out and she got out, and they stood in the February dark at 12:30 in the morning on a mountain 12 miles from Creston Falls. She said, show me the house. He showed her the house. It was what he had described, sound and heated and maintained with the attention of someone for whom the house was the foundation. The kitchen was a real kitchen, the kind used by someone who cooked because cooking was necessary and who had the equipment for necessity rather than appearance. The sitting room had a fire that he rebuilt while she was there, the fire producing the specific quality of mountain warmth that a fire in a stone fireplace in a mountain house produced, which was different from and better than the warmth of central heating in the specific way that things which required effort were different from and sometimes better than things which did not. He showed her the yellow and white room. She stood in the doorway of the yellow and white room. The bed was made with the yellow bedding, and the curtains were yellow and white, and on the bedside table was a photograph of a woman and a girl. The woman young and laughing, and the girl perhaps 4 years old, with her mother's eyes and a look of absolute delight at whatever had been happening when the photograph was taken. May stood in the doorway of the yellow and white room for a moment. She said he had done this room right. He said he had hoped so. She said the photograph on the table was exactly right. He said he had not been certain about the photograph. He said he had not known if it would make Rosie sad to see it, or glad. May said it would make her both, and that both was the right thing, and that a photograph of her mother in the room was Rosie being told that her mother was allowed to be here, and that her grief was allowed to be here, and that the man whose house this was understood that she was bringing her mother with her. He was quiet. She said she was going to sleep in the bedroom down the hall. She said they were going to be clear with the county person about who she was, which was a friend who had come to help with Rosie's arrival, which was the accurate description. He said he understood. She said after the county person left, and after Rosie was settled, she was going to go back to the diner. He said he understood that too. She went to the kitchen and put the things she had brought from the diner in their appropriate places. The bread in the bread box, the specific cereals in the pantry, the small jar of the particular kind of jam that children who liked to draw and who had yellow as their favorite color seemed statistically more likely to enjoy than other flavors, which was a calculation she had made in the diner kitchen at midnight, and which was not scientific, but was the kind of attention that mattered. She put one thing on the kitchen table. It was a drawing pad and a set of colored pencils. Not the cheap variety, the kind with enough colors that yellow could be represented in 4 different ways. She had had them in the diner's lost and found for 2 months, left by a child on a Saturday morning, and she had been keeping them in case the child came back, and the child had not come back, and she had brought them because they were there, and because a girl who liked to draw arriving at a new house in the morning needed to find something that said, "Drawing was expected here and welcome here." She went to the bedroom down the hall. She slept. The county person arrived at 9:10. Her name was Mrs. Crane, and she was approximately 50 and had the specific quality of someone who had been doing a difficult job for a long time and who had developed the combination of genuine care and professional distance that the difficulty of the job required. And that was not coldness, but was the management of a person who cared about a great many children and could not afford to be unprotected by the management. She had Rosie with her. Rosie was small for 7 and had her mother's eyes and was holding a soft toy rabbit that had the compressed look of something held very tightly for a long time. And she stood in the doorway of the mountain house with the specific quality that Callum had described, which was frightened. May was in the kitchen when they arrived. She came to the door. She crouched down to Rosie's level. She said hello. She said her name was May. She said she was glad Rosie had come. Rosie looked at her. May said there was a drawing pad and some colored pencils on the kitchen table, and that yellow was one of the colors. Actually, several yellows. Rosie looked at her for a moment. She said she liked yellow. May said she had thought she might. Mrs. Crane was watching this with the focused attention of someone whose job was to watch. She watched the house. She watched Callum, who was present and quiet, and present in the specific way that May had observed in him, the stillness that was not absence but attention. She watched May in the kitchen, and the food in the kitchen, and the specific quality of a house that had been prepared for a child, with the thought that preparation required. She looked at the yellow and white room. She stood in the doorway of it for a long time. She came back to the kitchen where Rosie was at the table with the drawing pad and the colored pencils, and was drawing something with the focused absorption of a child who had found a territory she knew how to be in. She said she had questions. May said she would answer what she could. She asked how long May had known Callum. May said she had known him from the diner. She said mountain people and diner people knew each other in the specific way of a small town where everybody's life intersected at the practical points. She asked if May was often at the house. May said she had come to help with Rosie's arrival and that she would be coming up when she was needed. Mrs. Crane looked at her with the assessment of someone who had been doing the job long enough to understand the difference between what people said and what was true, and the further difference between what was true and what was going to be true. She said Rosie was going to need consistency. May said she understood that. Mrs. Crane said she was going to be doing follow-up visits, and that the situation would be monitored, and that her concerns about a single man on a mountain were not fully resolved, but that the situation she was seeing was better than the situation she had been concerned about. She said the room was good. She said the photograph on the bedside table was the right instinct. She looked at May. She said she hoped the support would be sustained and not temporary. May said she understood what was being said. She said she could not promise the future, but she could be present for what was in front of her. Mrs. Crane looked at Rosie at the table, drawing with the yellow pencil with the focused absorption of a child who had found somewhere to put herself. She said that was a reasonable answer. She left at 11:30. Callum stood in the kitchen after she left and looked at Rosie drawing, and then looked at May, who was washing the cups from the coffee she had made for Mrs. Crane. He said he did not know how to thank her. She said she did not need thanking. He said he wanted her to know that he understood what she had done and what it had cost her to do it, and that he was not someone who did not see those things. She turned around from the sink. She looked at him. She said she had seen that about him. Rosie looked up from her drawing. She held it up. It was a house on a mountain in yellow and white, with a figure at the door that might have been any of them, or all of them, and above the house, a yellow sun that was the specific yellow of a child who had decided that yellow was her color and was using it with full commitment. May looked at it. She said it was a good house. Rosie looked at the drawing, and then at the room around her, and then at the window where the mountain was outside in the February morning, white and still and present in the way of mountains. She said she thought so too. May dried the cups. She stayed for lunch. She would come back on Saturday because Rosie would need someone on Saturday, and because the mountain was 12 miles away, and 12 miles was not far when there was a reason to cover it. She had not promised the future. She had been present for what was in front of her. It was enough to begin with. It was, she thought, the beginning of enough.